Hello, everyone. I'm so very happy to introduce Brett Hill here, who everyone probably knows by now. And I just even today learned new mindful communication strategies from him in a room, and it was just such a great experience. I'm very excited to learn more from this talk that Brett has prepared for you all. And I know it's going to be a very interesting and great experience. So I hope you enjoyed and learned from your wellness experiences. Now we're going to move on to a presentation from Brett Hill. Brett is not only my co-host with The Future is Mindful, he's also a trainer and coach himself, specializing in mindful communications. He's a certified organizational mindfulness workplace facilitator. In addition, Brett is the host of the Language of Mindfulness and Organizational Mindfulness podcast. He's also a previous experience. He also has previous experience working with Microsoft and software startups, and he brings a unique perspective in the space of mindfulness and technology, and everything that is happening today. He's all around a great person, and I'm very excited to hear from his talk here. So, Brett, stage is yours.
Thank you, Mark. Oh wow, this is kind of a rough transition. There's been so much going on with all the conference activity, and then this wellness session was awesome, and so that was great as well. So thank you all for being here. Um, I'm going to just take a breath and organize around delivering this talk because this is a topic that matters a great deal to me. I spent the better part of way too many years deeply involved with what is it that really makes a difference in helping us be what we can be, how to realize the gift of a human life, how to embody and step into that opportunity in a non trivial way. I mean, really, really diving into the pursuit of how does all this work? I've uh, always been a guy who likes to take things apart. Like when I was a kid, I used to take things apart. I have a story I tell about. We had a giant grandfather clock in the house I grew up with. I grew up with, every 15 minutes, like literal chimes, dong, dong. And one day I decided to figure out how it worked, so I took it apart. Taking a giant clock apart. And I learned that taking things apart and putting things together again are two different skills. But the point of that story is that I really want to know how things work. I really want to dive into understanding the mechanics of it um, in a way where I can actually get a handle on how things. So I'm taking it apart, my toys and building things. And when I started to get a little older, I took that to another level. Like, how do I work? How does the mechanics and way of being a human being? I don't mean just the bio part, but the emotions, thoughts, beliefs, hopes, dreams, fears, or woundedness, or courageousness, or communication. This took me on quite a journey. I'm going to talk a little bit about that journey. But I'm going to start at the end. And it's like, I came to the conclusion at some point that communications is really the thing that where it all comes together. And so I just want to ask a question. What would be the impact on your life if every conversation you ever have from here on out went better? What if you could take action to improve almost every single conversation you have? so that it's more connected, more authentic, it has a better outcome. You're more in touch with people, with events, with circumstances, with their contexts, with your needs, desires, authentic expression. How would that change your relationships, your professional life, organizations that you're involved with? I mean, certainly there are strategic scenarios that matter, like, you're stating your case in a courtroom, you're pleading your case to a policeman, you're pitching a relationship to a significant other, you're defending your position in a business meeting. All of these things can go better with, or if they went better, would that matter to you? I think obviously the answer to that is yes. And so what if I was to say that there are things that you can do so that that is so, and they're not hard. So, okay, wait. So there are simple things that I can do to make every conversation in the world that I will have go better. Then the follow-up question is, so how much energy are you putting into that talent, that skill, that capacity? So we've established that it matters tremendously. But how much do we actually focus on it? And I'm not trying to shame anybody into, oh, I'm not doing enough, but I'm trying to level set the value. Here we have something that's so integral and so important to humanity. And you can go to school and learn many, many things. How much of it is about how we actually connect and communicate? And yet, isn't that foundational to the success of all those things that we study? Wow. When I had that insight, it changed everything to me. And I'm still evangelizing, if you will, this, because it has made a profound difference in the quality of my life. And my mission in the world is to spread that around and help others as best I can to have some of those same benefits. And I've had the benefit of some incredible teachers and some incredible instruction. I went out and I found some of them, some great people. I'll talk about those in a minute. But here's the problem. The problem is that we study a lot about things. We study a lot about how does this work? How does the brain work? How does the body work? How do I build a molecule? How do I design a city? How do I build a bomb? How do I cure cancer? We study a lot about things. And in terms of mindfulness and in our lives, you can go and you can learn how to speak words that can help in a conversation. You can learn techniques. You can learn skills. You can learn about things a lot. You can learn how to build a bicycle. You can learn how fast it goes. You can learn what kinds of tires you should have. You can learn a tremendous amount about a bicycle and never get on one. And I encounter that a lot with people. I meet a lot of people, and more than can be a little discouraging sometimes, in the sense that I just want people to get on the bike. I'll explain what I mean. The direct experience of learning to ride the bike will always be much more powerful than reading about it. So we're talking about moving from studying something as an external object to getting present with the experience of what's it like. In this case, of course, the bike is your body, your mind, and you're the driver. Let them be your consciousness, your willpower, your focus, your attention, your capacity to be present with your experience. In many ways, a lot of what I have to talk about is that. I see many, 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 many master classes and workshops on that are about the bike. But we have to shift. We have to shift to creating the capacity to get on the bike and then riding and then having some skills. A lot of it's like this, and I love this picture because it's very it's a perfect metaphor for the way we live. Many people live lives, including me. What I'm talking about here. Let me tell this story. This is a story that's true. I was on a trip with my stepfather and my mother, and we were in the Rocky Mountains. So beautiful. If you've never been to the Rocky Mountains, you should go. Magnificent. We lived in the state of Colorado, and we were driving through Rocky Mountain National Park, and this amazing scenery. And I'm getting out. I'm just looking at it and just going, "Wow!" I'm in this like wow place, right? This almost a state of awe. And for me, I experience those things. It's kind of a full body experience, and I just get really still because I'm experiencing something like I'm hundreds of millions of years manifestation in this vast landscape right in front of me, and it's just so impactful. And I try to let that have a somatic impact on me, just to breathe it in and be present with it, and it does. I'm just in this state of wow. And my stepdad gets out the car, comes around, looks at the mountain, and goes, "Wow, just like the postcard," and gets back in the car and waits on us. And I'm like, whoa. No, I'm not trying to say that, I'm having a more evolutionary advanced experience, but I am so taken by the contrast in these moments. It's sort of like he's having a completely different experience than me, and we're in the same situation. And it's like it really hit me how different our experiences of the same kinds of things can be. And I did have the thought, it's like, oh no, I'm afraid he's got it wrong because the postcard is the image of the mountain, not the other way around. The mountain isn't like the postcard is the picture. And so it's kind of, okay, and how much is that a metaphor for the rest of our lives? We're walking around looking at postcards, and so we don't see the mountain right in front of us. Mark Leonard was talking about this before, and you've heard this as well in some of the other sessions. It's like the mind has a way of automatically putting things into preconceived boxes for us. And that we're really, really good at that. And that's efficient. It's really handy to not see the human being standing in front of you, but instead just see, oh, there's, Susie. She's the same Susie I saw yesterday and 1,000 times before. So I don't really need to see Susie because I know it's what the concept is of Susie, and I can look at the postcard of Susie. The practice of seeing through this immediate idea of what you're seeing. So you see Susie, my brain offers up, it's Susie. You've seen Susie. You don't need to think about her. You don't need to look at her. But instead, noticing that that's what's happening and then going, nah, I see that I see that, and now I see Susie. Now I'm going to ride the bike. I'm going to connect and see the person standing in front of me. And notice that maybe I don't want to, or whatever's coming on. But then, that's what makes it real. That's where the power of mindful communication comes in. You have to connect to your experience first. Then you can make a mindful choice about what to do. That's the real world. Seeing through the illusion of your dream, if you will. We'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. To connect to what's really happening, and then move from a more whole body place into the expression of that. Maybe it's caring. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's I need to take care of my safety. Maybe it's compassion or empathy. There's no right or wrong here. It's just noticing so that you can make a better choice, a more informed choice, a more connected choice. Wouldn't that result in a more satisfying experience for you and everyone else? If you don't, you wind up in this kind of a situation. This is happening, people. People are looking at devices in a similar way that the phones in these pictures are just metaphors for being obsessed with our thoughts. And this guy runs right into the truck, gets back up, and keeps walking, goes right back to his phone. This woman looking at her phone falls over, not noticing. There's so much of this where we just get disconnected from our actual experience of life. And I'm not trying to say that there's something wrong with a phone. I'm not down on, on that. I am trying to say, pay attention to your world, not in a, Jason Bourne sort of hyper vigilant, like, well, I know there's 42 trucks out there, and here are all their license plates, and I know what to do and how to exit. Not in that kind of a sense. Although that may be better than, being disconnected, but connected to the humanity, our common humanity, and really more than anything, what is true for you, connected to what is the truth of my experience now. That really is kind of the big question. How did I get focused on this? I'll give you a couple of examples. And this guy is Hiroshi Akita, who is a 7th degree black belt in Aikido. There's only a few of them in the world. Now, I'm not like an Aikido master or even really very good. I did take in my younger years, I was not bad at martial arts, but I was never very accomplished. But I want to tell you a story about something he taught me in a course that he was teaching that was really a powerful lesson. He would put his arm up like this, and he would bare forearm, and they would have somebody come put their bare forearm against him like this, and he would say, okay, connect. And this was like in the context of doing some kind of, pseudo fighting dance, right? So and he would look at you, and he'd stop, and the moment you made contact with him, he'd look right there, and he goes, body knows, the body knows. And so he's doing this forearm to forearm, skin to skin. He goes, the body knows. And people are looking at him like, what the heck? What is this about? And what he was saying is that inherent in the body is the knowledge about what to do in this moment with this person in this particular dance. In this case, it was a fake fight, right? So you're like struggling. It's like what to do isn't about the technique. Although that's there, you don't have to go, well, I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to step this way, do this. Instead, it's just like the body knows. The body knows what to do in that moment. If you let yourself be apprised of or take advantage of that innate organic knowledge. And I thought that is a fascinating concept. So that in and of itself will take you far, right? So mindful meditation, breath, body, and also body scans, letting the body inform you about what it knows is a powerful experience in and of itself. But the actual message here was, he said, this is a foundational practice. He said, if you master this, you will know everything there is you need to know in the practice of Aikido. And I thought, wait, what? There's such a thing as a practice that is so foundational that if you just master that, you learn everything. And this isn't a guy who went to a workshop. This is one of the few masters at this level in the world. And here he is, after decades of practice and skill and accomplishment and mastery, saying, oh, here's what I know. I know that if you do this and you do it really well and you make that your practice, you will know what I know now having come through all this work, I'm going, whoa. So there's such a thing as a foundational, and so on. What else? What else is there? Are there other foundational practices? Are there things that are so powerful that they have embedded within them the capacity to enliven and awaken in you a knowledge that goes well beyond the immediate practice? Wow. Hold that concept. So I began to explore so many different kinds of ways to get engaged in, what is my experience and how can I know? And what is like the foundational truth of where's the foundational practice? So I did a lot of work with somatic psychology, studying with some amazing people, group communications, dynamic public speaking, ecstatic dance with Gabriel Roth, lots of different kinds of things. And when I step back from all of it and I go, so what is the foundational practice? I'll tell you a story, another thing that helped put this into focus for me. I was in a training for somatic psychotherapy, and everybody was paired up. And so they were talking to each other in small little pairs, and there was so much presence. So there was so much mindfulness and presence, and one person talking to another, and there was just so much connection. It was almost like a little bubble around each person, each couple. And I'm going, well, wait a second. What? It was one of those moments where you could zoom out and you kind of look around and go, what's going on here? What's happening here? And I asked myself, what is it that makes all these people able to build this kind of presence with each other and to be so effective? Because it wasn't the exercise we were doing, it was something they were bringing to the exercise. And it occurred to me that they were all really good, because these were a bunch of somatic therapists, all really good at mindful communications. They all knew how to be really present with their own experience, let the other person have their experience and be in their experience and relate back and forth with it. I thought this is just an assumption that they've got these skills, and I thought, oh my God, this is it. This is the foundational practice. It's mindfulness, and an extension of mindful communication, as I'll explain that in a minute. That's what makes all these things possible. You contact improvisation, it's like the body knows. It's like being in touch with someone. What do you do now? How does it work? How does it work right now? It's no different than someone walking into the room and says, well, Brett, you don't know what you're doing whenever this project is all messed up. Taking a breath, noticing, oh my gosh, I want to be defensive. I want to be reactive. Should I be? Probably not. It's a choice. Now it's a choice as opposed to just being automatic. Mindfulness is at the basis of all these practices. Emotional intelligence, nonviolent communication, somatic psychotherapy should be at the basis of coaching. And also, how much does being mindful and present with your in the moment experience going to help you in your conversations with anybody? Foundational. I'll tell you a little bit about how I learned to see. This is a story about how this foundational practice of being present with your experience. When it first came to me, I was about 13. And I was in this, I used to spend a lot of summers outside, all the time, outside. And back in the day, because I'm an old guy, and back in the day, we had contact lenses that were made of hard stuff. And were those contact lenses diving to a pool, and they would come out. Okay, what are you going to do? You just lost your high dollar contact lenses. These weren't replaceable. They were made for you. This is before the replaceable lenses. So you're sitting in the swimming pool and your lens is in there somewhere. I'm going, man, what am I going to do? I know I'm going to get in trouble. So I decided, there was no one else in the pool. So I decided, you know what? I wonder if I can find it. And of course, that kind of seems like crazy. A tiny little piece of glass at the bottom of a pool. But what the heck? The hubris of a 12-year-old cannot be underestimated. And so I took a breath, went down underwater, and I started looking, and I realized that the field of vision, of course, when you see underwater, it's different. The light is different. And I thought, you know what? A piece of glass on the bottom of the pool is going to look really different than any other part of the bottom of this pool. It's going to look a tiny bit different. What is it possible for me to notice that? I didn't know. I was just asking kind of an objective question. And so I began to look at each individual frame of my vision. Like, let's take that spot and look really, really, really bring a high quality of attention. In Google's silly course, the Search Inside Yourself Mindfulness course, they talk about this being high resolution awareness, right? So bringing a really high quality of attention and focus to each picture. Boom, boom. No, that looks normal. Scanning, that looks normal. And after about 10 minutes, I found it. It was just a tiny little difference in the way the light looked on the bottom of the pool. So sure enough, of course, I was very happy with myself, but but it made an impression on me because I began to realize, well, if this is possible for a person to be so focused to find something like that, what else is there that one could notice? So I began this process of kind of applying this high quality attention to lots of things that I had discovered, and I began to listen really deeply, or closely, I should say. Didn't know a lot about depth back then, but I knew I was hearing something kind of I began to hear emotions in language I never heard before. And I began to hear sort of storylines that weren't being spoken. And it got me really interested in what's going on behind the scenes with people. And that's one of the things that started me on a path of inquiry about how are people built? How are people put together? Which was an amazing journey. So this leads fast forward to the art of somatic listening. It's like listening, almost a beginner's mind to this, what I call the screen of sensitivity. Everything that you're experiencing, emotions, feelings, thoughts, memories, impressions, and letting that be the inputs into your experience so that you can then go, oh, well, it feels to me like this. And that would include things like, I want to be really reactive here, or I want to say something snarky, or I want to be sarcastic, or whatever. Not saying that you shouldn't be that way sometimes, but just noticing that that's what's there and then making a choice. It's all about the choice. So mindfulness, one of the most popular definitions, paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the moment, and non-judgmentally. On purpose. On purpose. I'm going to see Susie on purpose. That means if you aren't aware of choosing to be present, then you aren't. There's a choice here. The present moment and non-judgmentally. That means suspending. Well, Susie's being mean to me. Well, maybe she is. Oh, maybe she's angry. Maybe she's upset. I don't know. I can get curious. If I can create the space for being curious. Let's talk for a minute about the neurology of this. There's a thing you probably heard called the default mode network. Unless you perceive danger or something odd, your brain will do the easiest thing. So somebody walks in the room and says, Brett, you screwed that project up. Oh, yeah, well, if you had put the funding in that it needed to give me the resources, then this wouldn't have happened. Okay, that might be the easiest thing for you to say because that's on automatic. I feel defensive. I feel sensitive, challenged, going to rise up and defend my territory, defend my good name. Hey, I'm not saying that's unjustified, but is it the best choice? Now, my brain is going to want to do the easiest thing. And your brains are really, really good at finding things that don't belong and also determining if I'm in danger. The first thing they walk in, they say, well, Brett, you're doing a really bad job here. If that's one thing, it's another thing if they walk in the room with a birthday cake And they say the same thing. Well, it's going to be a non sequitur. They walk in the room with, something a little more threatening. That's going to jump out like crazy because your brain's going to notice. Someone gets on public transportation and they seem like they're threatening. Your brain just notices immediately. Whether they are or not, your brain is on the scan for those things. Now, this isn't most people. This is like the picture before, where you're looking at the phone and you're seeing the mountain on the phone, or rather than the mountain itself. That's default mode, and that's the way a lot of people live their lives. That's studying the bike and not getting on it. Let's don't do that, right? It's easy. That's the easy thing, and the brain's really good at that. When you learn to tie your shoe, what's it like? For those of you that still do, I understand there are people who never learn to tie shoes because they don't do that anymore. Just like, you don't need to read a dial clock anymore. But if you learned to tie a shoe, what's it like? Or anything like learning to play an instrument, anything that takes your attention first. It's like, okay, I'm going to focus on this. And there's this like, how's this work? This is like, so the moment you start to go, what is this about? I don't quite get this. That uncomfortableness in your body means your brain is trying to learn to integrate. Really super high place of learning. So you learn to integrate this experience. You do it. Now, 2 weeks later, what's it like? Done. You're not thinking about it anymore because it's a habit. It's muscle memory. And that goes in away from a really high degree of consciousness, really of attention, I should say, to none at all. That's the way the brain works. It shoves things down because the attention is a high energy function. It takes a lot of juice to bring that to bear. And so the brain's going to organize around, we don't need to pay attention to that. You've done that a billion times before. Let's don't focus on it. That's just the natural, normal thing. That's fine when you talk about tying your shoe. But when you're talking about what's this political party like, or what's this individual like, it becomes a completely different thing, because suddenly, instead of being a person in front of you, it's an encapsulated, labeled thing in your mind that you're not really seeing in color and in dimensionality. And so once you know this, interrupting this default mode network becomes sort of the new mission in your life. It's like, I would rather be connected to the mountain than appreciating my phone. I would rather be appreciating the people in my life personally, deeply, than walking around thinking about them all the time. When you do that, your life kind of lights up. You sort of like discover that there's a lot of beauty in the world. There's a lot of love in the world. And there's a lot of joy and opportunity in the world you just didn't notice before. Or if you are noticing, yay for you, that's fabulous. Then you know it's just there. And isn't that the message, like of so many like films I'm thinking about? The Wizard of Oz at the end is kind of like, it was always there. I just didn't notice. And that's the beautiful thing about mindfulness. It wakes you up to opportunities that are right in front of you, to the contact lens that's right there. You just didn't notice. So how do you do this? Well, there are practices and techniques. This is the basic mindfulness practices, but there are lots of other things you can do. As Mark Leonard was saying, there's lots of things you can do in context as well. And my work about mindful communications is a lot about being mindful and present with others. But it all gets back to increasing the power of your brain's executive functions. This is where a lot of the good stuff happens, is in the newest part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, where planning, attention, decision-making, judgment, identity, impulse control, abstract reasoning, all this good stuff, empathy. This is high order functioning for the human mind. It's the newest part of the brain. So it's kind of, the recent human adaptation. And so it's not as mature in some ways, one might argue, as other parts. And because it has limited capacity, because it takes a lot of juice to run, we run out. So that's why you sit down and you do your meditation. Otherwise, what would happen when we do a mindfulness practice? You sit down, pay attention to your breath, notice your breathing. And then 20 minutes later, everybody would go, well, there's nothing to this. I can do this for 20 minutes uninterrupted, no problem. And you're just constantly seeing. But what the experience is that most people, after trying to learn to pay attention to their breath, after about 10 seconds or less, or, depending on where you're at, they're thinking about tomorrow, today, what you wish you said, what you're going to do. And that's not wrong. It's just that we don't have enough energies to sustain a focused attention scenario. And that can be something we can work on. And the research is in on this. Here's a paper of 4,000 scientific papers. Research in such disciplines as psychology, neuroscience, medicine provide a wealth of evidence that mindfulness improves attention, cognition, emotions, behavior, and physiology. All these things and more. And mindfulness is the foundational skill that's going to open the door for much, much more. So here we're kind of pitching, wouldn't it be great to have good attention? Wouldn't it be great to have good discernment? Yeah. But what we're really doing is saying these are artifacts of the capacity to be mindful. Riding the bicycle, wouldn't it be great to ride a bicycle? What does that empower? Exploration. You're going to learn about the city you're in. You're going to learn about the state you're in. You're going to learn about your neighborhood. You're going to meet people. That is more than just, I'm going to ride a bike. What becomes possible is so much more. So with mindfulness, once you begin to do this, you've done the hard work of someone walks in and says, you failed, instead of going, you're going, no, you failed, right? So that's default mode, automatic. Instead, you've done the work already of being mindful. And someone says, you failed, you go, I really want to blurt out something. I really want to say something. I'm noticing everything in my body, clenching, tension. It's a somatic, a lot of energy, right? But instead, you take a breath. And when you do, you create an opportunity. Now, when you have this opportunity, and this is where the focus of my work is, there's a mindful moment now. Now, what do you do? Because often you can do the hard work of having these mindful moments and creating more of them in your life. But what do you do now? What skills are available to you that you can execute, that you can inhabit, you can embody from this mindful place? And when you do, what kind of authority do they have in the world? This is where I say mindfulness plus communication is like a superpower, like none other. It's amazing. It gives you the ability to make choices about the kinds of things you're going to say and do. You're going to choose from a set of tools, of skills. And when you do it from this place, they become amazingly empowered as opposed to mechanical. Now you can really, really be more skillful and present and connected and authentic. So, disconnected, unconscious, misaligned, self-centered, ineffective. Stimulus and response, right? When you bring mindfulness into it, you create a space. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. This is a famous quote. In our response lies our growth and freedom. Viktor Frankl. To be more successful, work on increasing the space. Increase your capacity to be more mindful under stress. Now you can make better choices. Now, and that results in much better outcomes for you, for everyone. Now you're connected, conscious, aligned, centered, effective, and more. And this is what I call the language of mindfulness. And this is what I teach. It's the heart of my work. Because in this way, we can have much more connected, authentic, engaged conversations, much more satisfying. You miss fewer opportunities to create the circumstances for better outcomes. You can't make better outcomes happen. You can only create those circumstances. And that's what it's about for me. It's about helping people create the capacity to be more mindful and then learning some skills you can implement from this more mindful place. And I believe truly that is what can not only change your world, but by virtue of the fact that you're being more effective, you're helping everyone else in the world be more effective too. And that's the way we get things done in the language of mindfulness. So let me come back to my screen here. So that's it. Do we have questions? Let's see. Do we have time for questions? I think we can maybe take one. What are some of the most impactful tools, experiences you've found to help organizations and teams level up their communications? Thanks, Rick. That's a great question. There are some basic skills. The first is to simply start working on slowing things down. So making space for space, helping people learn to get present with their experience of speaking with people and not have to make a statement about it, not have to comment on it. So helping people get somewhat more comfortable with just the power of being, I don't want to say silent, but like questioning, what am I speaking for? Let's say, why am I talking? That's the way Ron Siegel puts it, WAIT. Why am I talking? Like really getting clear about what am I speaking? What am I saying? Who am I saying it to? And owning your impact. So all up, slowing down, being present, watching other people's emotions and naming those things can be really powerful as well. Let's see, when it comes to learning mindful communications in business, what would you recommend as a good starting? The first thing to learn to be a mindful communicator is that everything that you say matters. Everything that you say matters. They say there's a saying that talk is cheap, but it shouldn't be. So the first thing that happens if you feel like that when you realize that your words can have tremendous authority, and I don't mean like, you're going to tell you what you do, but I mean, you inhabit a place of authentic communication because you're connected to what's true for you and you speak from that place. Suddenly you've got, this is a pretty powerful piece you've got here, pretty powerful device, your voice. It can rule, it can change people. When you walk up to somebody, you say, you know what, I haven't said this to you, but I really like the way you show up in our meetings. That's going to make someone's day when you come from an authentic place. When you realize the power of your own embodied authority, as I call it, so the very first thing you've got to do is to learn to respect that what you say matters. Words they shouldn't be cheap. You learn to be conscious about what you do in that way. Because when you pick up something that's really powerful, let's pick up a power tool. First thing you do is you go, well, I'm holding something powerful. We need to have that same respect for our own capacity. So with that, I think we're about ready to transition to the next session here. I just want to say thank you so much for being here and being a part of this conversation. It means a lot to me personally. As you can tell, I'm really passionate about this, and I hope that something has come across. You can find my work at thelanguageofmindfulness.com, and also, of course, please feel free to write to me at brett@thefutureismindful.com as well. I'd love to talk to you about how you can have more of this in your life or your organization. And with that, I'm going to end the session and we'll get ready for our next session. Thank you so much. Bye now.